Interesting video. We like watching Peter Schiff sometimes. He's a libertarian, but I'm not gonna play that one about Navalny because I don't want to get taken down. And it has a word in it that'll get us taken down. All right. Let's watch this Tucker Carlson / Peter Schiff video. Like I said, I haven't been reading Capital or reading economics textbooks lately because I've been so busy with wrestling, which I'm hoping will change over this winter break. So I might not be in the best position to talk about complex economic topics right now, but I'll do my best.
State of the cutting edge of financial journalism in this country. Peter Schiff is one of the few honest men left in that business, and we're happy to get his assessment tonight. Peter Schiff, thanks so much.
Tucker Carlson just said Peter Schiff is one of the few honest men left in the business of economics, in the field of economics. So true. I mean, it's so true, and I don't even like Peter Schiff, right? I disagree with so much of what Peter Schiff says. He's basically like a free market libertarian. But he actually, is honest. You could tell he means what he says. He actually predicts when the economy is going to crash, and when there's an inflationary bubble. So that's why I like to listen to him and react to him, because he's at least honest, right? We can find where we actually disagree with each other. Whereas a lot of other economists are just liars and propagandists for corporate America.
For coming on. So
my question.
This is a massive change, looking not at the CPI, but at the actual cost of living in the country. It's very obvious that the inflation rate is not 7%. It's much higher than that, in that it costs more than 7% to live here than it did last year. Why is this not on the front page of every publication?
Well, because the government, Wall Street, the Federal Reserve has a vested interest in the public not understanding how bad inflation is. In fact, one of the ways the Fed's been able to justify creating more inflation is because they claimed we didn't have enough of it. But the only reason we didn't have enough...
All right, so this is the thing with libertarians. They claim that the Fed printing money is the only thing that leads to inflation, right? The Fed prints money, therefore there's more money in existence, and the goods and services cost more money. But what they completely ignore is that capitalists are the ones who have to increase their prices, right? And the reason they continue, or one of the reasons they continually increase their prices, is to maintain their profits, right? They need to continually maintain a certain level of profit so they can continue to expand, so they can pay for their manufacturing overhead, and so they can continue their businesses, so they can continue to pay their workers, so they can build new facilities with more workers. They need to sell their products, their commodities, for a certain price. Otherwise, they won't have enough money to continue their operations, to continue to expand, and to continue to take home millions of dollars in profit for themselves or pay millions of dollars to their corporate shareholders. So these massive profits and these capitalists at the top of our society needing to maintain their insane profits that allows them to live lives of luxury that the mass of society couldn't even understand is what drives them to continually increase prices. And they act like the profit motive and the system of capitalism itself has nothing to do with inflation and rising prices. Like, it's just the Fed. It's just the government. Like, just let the economy crash, and then everything will work out in the end. That's basically Peter Schiff's prescription for fixing capitalism. It's like, how about we produce goods and commodities for their useful character, for their useful value, for what society needs, rather than produce them so people who own the means of production can make trillions of dollars in profit, and Jeff Bezos can buy a yacht that's so big that it needs another yacht to prop it up. That is not producing commodities for what people need. That is a wasteful way to produce commodities, as the cost of food and gas and things that the mass of society need are constantly rising in order to maintain the profits of people like Bezos, maintain the profits of people who ride on mega yachts all day.
Enough of it is because they were relying on their own highly rigged CPI. The CPI wasn't always this dishonest. When they compare our...
They're talking about, there's this way that you calculate, is the CPI, I believe the CPI, here, let's look it up. Just so I can be sure before I go into a rant about it. Consumer price index. Yeah, so there are all these technocratic ways that the Fed and that modern pro-capitalist economists measure production and measure how the economy works, so they can try and make sure capitalism continues to function well. Take technocratic measures to make sure that capitalism continues to function and produce a large amount of goods. So the consumer price index is one of those measures. And you hear Peter Schiff saying that, the way they've been calculating the consumer price index is wrong, right? It's just biased based on whatever the people in charge of it want it to be. Our government is so thoroughly captured by corporations, they can just tweak even the economic metrics themselves to maintain and carry out whatever they want. So it's just an example of how broken the field of economics is and how much it serves the ruling class of capitalism.
Inflation rates to the inflation of the 1970s, we're not using the same CPI that we used then. The annualized rate of inflation so far, according to the CPI for 2021, is 7.3%. If you annualize the first 11 months, that's the worst rate since 1982. But if we were using the same CPI as we used in 1982, the rate would be closer to 15%, which means it's the worst year in inflation in U.S. history.
So it's the worst year of inflation in U.S. history, and he's talking about, what do you say, 1992, which was 30 years ago. So we've also experienced 30 years of neoliberalism, of outsourcing jobs, of people's wages being depressed, of our tax dollars being spent en masse to fund these wars for profit overseas. Things have gotten continually worse for the working class, and now on top of that, the goods and services that they're buying are more expensive than they've been in 30 years. So we have all these compounding contradictions of capitalism, which are just making things worse and worse for the working class as capitalism continues and as the era of neoliberalism continues. So yeah, really, really tough situation for the working class. And it shows how right Marx was, how correct Marx was, that this system is just rotten at its core. And it is contradictory at its core. And the contradictions at the core of capitalism are going to compound and compound on each other. And that's how we got where we are today, where 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 60,000 Americans die every year because they don't have access to basic health insurance. Inflation is the worst it's been in 30 years. And at the same time, you have people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk going on joy rides to space, because they own means of production, which their workers use to produce commodities. It's a very, very, very poor and contradictory way to organize society, capitalism is.
Because the highest one year was 1980 when it was 13.5%, and this year it's more than that.
So I guess I don't understand why no one's being punished for this crime. I see people destroyed, literally destroyed, for voting for the wrong person or hitting on the wrong person at a party or supporting their brother over text messages or whatever. The people who destroyed the U.S. dollar seem to be getting away with it. How is...
They run the whole country, Tucker. They run the whole country, including the news outlet that you work for. The corporations own the media. They own the government, the state, which includes the Fed, which they're going to complain about here. They are the ruling class, and they do not suffer consequences. Just look at how quickly the ruling class covered up everything with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. How quickly they swept that under the rug, and they even, likely had Jeffrey Epstein killed. The ruling class does what they want, and when they get called on it, they cover it up, using their wealth and power. That is how capitalism works. That is how it's always worked. Especially neoliberalism, where power and capital has been concentrated at the top so thoroughly.
Is that?
Yeah, well, they just renominated Powell to a second term, as if he did such a great job on his first term. It's a complete disaster. Of course, they might have replaced him with somebody.
Inflation outpacing wage growth. It's almost like Marx predicted that this was going to happen 200 years ago.
Even worse, but this is the only way the government can finance all the spending. You have the Democrats now promising all sorts of stuff for nothing. We're going to get free preschool. Everyone's going to get paid family and medical leave, and no one's going to have to pay for it. Nobody's taxes are going up. We're paying.
And I think largely what the Democrats are going to do is they're not even going to implement any of these social programs. Like these social programs that they're talking about would probably actually help capitalism function better, right? Like if people had daycare, you know, if like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk were taxed a little bit more so people could have daycare, right? And so people could have paternal and maternal leave by law, which maternal leave is a thing in every single other country in the world besides Papua New Guinea, even though Peter Schiff is acting like it's some crazy, impossible thing that could never happen. We're the only country in the world besides Papua New Guinea who doesn't have maternal leave. But they probably would actually help capitalism because then people, you know, would have more money to spend. But, you know, what I think the Biden administration and these technocratic neoliberal Democrats are going to do is increase taxes to continue to fund their wars, you know, to continue to fund the wars with China, to continue to fund massive government subsidies for corporatists like Elon Musk, and just to basically maintain the profits of capitalism, which we were talking about at the beginning of this segment, which capitalists need to maintain at a certain level in order to function. You know, the government is likely going to increase taxes to continue to maintain capitalism and maintain these corporatists who own the government. And they're talking about doing all these wonderful programs, which are highly popular amongst regular people, as a sort of head fake, right? We need to increase your taxes because we're going to do all these good things, and then our taxes are going to continue to fund endless wars and corporate subsidies. I could be wrong about that. Maybe Joe Biden will actually basically turn the U.S. into more of a social democracy, but I do not see any evidence of it thus far.
For it through inflation.
All I see evidence of is a new Cold War with China, and increasing hostility with China and a use of our tax dollars to threaten China.
Because the money to pay for all this government is being printed into existence.
All this government? The money being used to fund all this dang government, all this dang socialism. These people are obsessed with the government. That's the thing with libertarians. They are obsessed with the government, but they are incapable of understanding that the government is run by capitalists. Like, Peter, who do you think is in charge of the government? Do you think it's just this nefarious actor? 92% of American elections are decided by the candidate who raises the most money. Our bills are literally written by corporate lobbyists. The government is just a violent and repressive tool for the capitalists who make up the actual ruling class. Libertarians just have identified the wrong ruling class. They think the ruling class is the government. It's not. It's the corporations and the folks on Wall Street.
And then it's spent into circulation. And as it's spent into circulation, it's driving up prices. And when Jim Cramer was talking about all the money we're spending, yeah, the problem is we're not earning it, we're printing it, and then prices are going up. Our productivity is collapsing. We just got the worst productivity numbers in...
Productivity has been collapsing for years. Productivity has been collapsing for years. It is not because of... it's partially because of high taxes, I guess. Partially because of high taxes to fund the military budget and these corporate subsidies like I was talking about. That is a factor. But, a large factor is decreasing wages, right? The reason that capitalists are driven to increase their productivity is so they have to hire less workers, right? If I have a machine that needs, that plows a field or whatever. Yeah, boy, thank you. And it takes 5 people to operate. I have to pay wages to all 5 of those people. But if I invent a new machine, a more productive machine that only needs 1 person to work it, that's going to save me money because that's less people who I have to pay wages to. But under neoliberalism, under the current system, wages are so low, capitalists aren't being driven to increase productivity. There's less drive to increase productivity. They'd rather just pay the starvation wages to their workers. And this has been happening in Europe and the United States for the last 40 years. And it's totally destroyed this idea that unregulated or that capitalism in general and markets are beneficial for productivity, right? Are the best thing for productivity. Capitalism has been decreasing in productivity with the increase in neoliberalism.
62 years in this country, our trade deficits are exploding. The economy is imploding. It is a mess. We just can't see it because we're blinded by all the inflation.
Right. Really
Blinded by all the inflation. So he's basically saying what I was saying. Our economy is a giant jumble of contradictions, a giant jumble of corruption, and inflation is just the cherry on top.
quick. How long till the investors have lost faith in the U.S. dollar? That's why they're running to crypto. How long till the rest of the world loses enough faith that the U.S. dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency?
And crypto to me just seems like a privatization of the money supply. It seems like further deregulation and further corporate control.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy, thank you. Now rather than corporations indirectly controlling the Fed, right? Corporations lobbying the government so that they can have an influence over what the Fed does. With crypto, I feel like corporations will just have direct control of the money supply itself, which is largely why China has disallowed crypto, which, thank God for China.
Well, people still have confidence in the dollar and the Federal Reserve. I don't know why they've gotten so many things wrong. You know, I think the people that are running to crypto are unfortunately running in the wrong direction. They're probably jumping from the frying pan into the fire. But eventually, the world is going to leave the U.S. dollar. The dollar is going to collapse. Money is going to flow into other currencies.
And maybe that's when revolution will happen in the U.S. I don't know.
It's going to flow into real.
Because largely the way that the U.S. is able to spend endless money, the reason they're able to, you know, spend hundreds of billions of dollars on our bloated military budget, despite the fact that the country is trillions of dollars in debt. You know, the reason they're able to give millions in subsidies to corporations like Tesla, even though the government is trillions of dollars in debt, is largely because the U.S. dollar is dominant, right? The U.S. dollar is the dominant dollar, not just in the U.S., but on the global stage, you know, largely because oil has to be traded in the U.S. dollar, making it powerful. That's what they call the petrodollar. But that's changing too. You know, China has already started exchanging some of their oil using a different form of currency. And like we said, there's all these different factors which may lead to the collapse of the U.S. dollar's dominance on the global stage, which may, you know, decrease their ability to endlessly fund the empire.
Real money.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Or it'll just transition into like a fascist state.
Gold and silver. It's going to go into real assets, stocks, real estate, mostly outside the United States, because we're going to be the epicenter of a coming currency crisis and sovereign debt crisis that's going to make the financial crisis of 2008 look like a Sunday school picnic.
Wow. He said it's going to make the financial crisis of 2008 look like a Sunday school picnic. I don't know if people remember how bad the financial crisis of 2008 was. But it wasn't good. It was not good at all. So, interesting stuff there from Peter Schiff. Like I said, even though he's a libertarian and I disagree with him sometimes, I disagree with him on his solutions, his analysis is usually fairly solid. And there's a lot to be learned. That's why you listen to folks you disagree with. Because it's okay. We can learn something from everyone. Bits of the truth are always getting lost everywhere.